Hello, welcome to A Little Bit of Everything YouTube channel. Today we're going to make beer at home using a beer kit that you can purchase at any wine or beer outlet store. Here's the kit that you can purchase. Today we're going to make Kolsch beer. Everything you'll need will come in the kit except for a few of the items that I'll discuss in a couple of minutes. The kit comes with the instructions, the yeast that you'll need, and the types of hop pellets to make the Kolsch beer in this case. You'll also receive the dry malt extract, the bag that you'll need for the malt, the grains, some additional Bavarian wheat malt extract, the pure malt extract, and after the primary process is done and before you bottle, you'll need priming sugar, and it comes in the kit. What doesn't come in the kit would be at least a 2.5 gallon pot to boil the ingredients, the spoon, and the plastic primary fermenter, and at the very end the caps for bottling, and what you'll need the airlock for the fermenter. Now we'll go over step by step how to make beer at home. There are 4 additional items that do not come with the kit that you'll need to have on day 1 of brewing. Starting with a thermometer, a hydrometer to measure the specific gravity. Both are very inexpensive. You can find them at the brew store. A siphon unit, and lastly a sanitizer, a chemical sanitizer. Every piece of equipment that's going to be touching your brew needs to be sanitized, and we'll go through a very strong sanitization process in just a few minutes. I poured 2.5 gallons of water into a pot. You can use your own tap water if it tastes very good, or you can purchase spring water at the store. Altogether you're going to need 5 gallons of water. 5 gallons of water is fairly heavy, so most people who brew at home will do 2.5 gallons initially, and then after the wort is done they'll add the 2.5 gallons before we start the fermentation process. As you can see, the water is starting to warm up. We don't want the water to go much past 160 degrees. That's the perfect seeping temperature. Anything more than that and the beer is not going to come out the way you would like. So in just a couple minutes more, it should hit the desired 160 degree temperature. Again, you want to keep it under 170. While the water is coming up to the desired temperature of at least 160 to 170 degrees, you can go ahead and get your grain bag ready. Again, the bag comes inside the kit. You're going to pour your grain into the grain bag. In this case, we're using crushed Carapils malt. And as we fill the bag, you want to do it loosely, you don't want it to get all packed together. It'll steep better if you keep it loose. So we're going to go ahead and make sure it's all in there. Again, we'll tie a knot on this end so it doesn't escape. And in just a minute, when the water's at the desired temperature, we'll go ahead and put the bag in so it will steep. We're now going to place the grain bag. The water is approximately 165 degrees, so perfectly between 160 and 165. We're going to let that seep for 20 minutes. The grains have been seeping for 20 minutes now. We're going to go ahead and remove. We don't want to squeeze. You just want to lift up and let the water boil out. Your water is now called a wort. I've made sure throughout the whole steeping process that we've kept the temperature in that 160 to 165 degree range. If it gets over 170, then some tannins and some really bad tastes could affect how your wort and eventually how your beer will actually taste. We're going to increase the temperature so the wort comes to a nice rolling boil before we go on to the next stage. Once the water starts to boil, we're going to go ahead and pour in the liquid malt extract. In this case, it's a Pilsen. And I highly recommend, it's a good tip, to run the liquid malt extract under hot water. It's almost like a molasses, and if you don't do this, it'll be very difficult to pour. While we've been waiting for the wort to boil, I went ahead and sterilized all the equipment, including the spoon. Here's the liquid malt extract, and we're going to slowly pour that in. It's critical that you stir constantly. You don't want to build up at the bottom of the pot and have the extract burn. It'll stop boiling, but then it'll come back up to a boil pretty quickly. Friends and family ask, what does it smell like? Does your kitchen smell like a brewery? And the easy or quick answer is, yes it does. As this will go ahead and lightly boil for the next 40 minutes. Once we start to put the hops in, it really will start to smell like a brewery. Some people like the smell, some people don't. We'll be back in 40 minutes to go ahead and put the dry malt extract, and then after that we'll be putting in the hops. Actually, I misspoke. As it comes back to a boil, we're going to go ahead and put in the first hops. For Coast Bear, there are two types of hops that will go in. The Fugle hops are going to go in right now, and then after 40 minutes we'll be putting the dry malt extract and then the Tettnang hops after that. So we're going to go ahead and carefully put the Fugle hops or Fugle hops in. Again, stirring. Again, it'll quickly come back to a boil. And we don't want a heavy boil, we just want kind of a rolling boil. Set your timer for 40 minutes. Occasionally come back and stir, and then we'll be set to go to the next step. The wort has been boiling for the last 40 minutes. We've had the vent on to get some of the fumes out of the house. It's late November here in the Philadelphia suburbs, and we can't open any windows. It's a little bit too chilly outside. Now that it's been boiling for 40 minutes, we're going to add the dry malt extract. And as you pour that in, have your sanitized spoon. And the recipe for this one calls for 2 bags. And this is a Bavarian wheat. Stir that real well before I add the next bag. Okay, we're going to get the next bag. Pour Pour that in. Time got away from me. I was hoping to make this beer for Christmas. The second stage, the secondary fermentation process, will begin in 5 to 7 days, and there'll be a part 2 to this video series on making beer at home. After the secondary phase, it'll sit in what they call a carboy, and if you don't have a carboy, you should go out and get one. For wine it's a 6-gallon, but for beer it's a 5-gallon carboy. It's basically a very large glass jug. I made the Christmas wine to give away as presents several weeks back. It's been aging. That was a strawberry Riesling, and I'll be starting to give that out to family and friends over the next couple of weeks, and it should be aged nicely by the time Christmas rolls around. This has been boiling for about 5 minutes. Again, we just added the 2 bags of the dry malt extract. The next ingredient, and actually the last ingredient for bottling day 1, is the hops, and this one is a German Tettnang. The hops really generate a very strong and I think very pleasant smell, but for some it's a little bit too strong. The Kolsch beer is enjoyed pretty much by everybody. They're very sophisticated beer drinker. People who don't like too strong a beer taste or too strong alcohol, a hard flavor, Kolsch will go well with most things. I do make a stronger beers. I have my own version of a Dos Equis, and for those who really enjoy a stronger taste, they tend to like my Dos Equis. There's one more hops to get off. This is just going to boil for another, say, 5 or 10 minutes. While this is boiling, you may want to go ahead and prepare a sink. The whole pot is going to be going into the sink, and in the sink you need to have water with quite a bit of ice. The goal is to bring this from a boiling temperature down to 70 degrees as quickly as you can. Once that happens, we'll go ahead and siphon off the wort into the primary fermenter. The final boil, the last 10 minutes, it's completed. We're going to now carry the pot into a sink of ice water. Gently go ahead and place the pot in. And again, the goal, the idea is to, as quickly as possible, get this from 212 degrees down to 70 degrees. It varies depending on how much water and ice you have, but that should happen within the hour. And then we'll be going on to the next stage, as I mentioned, and we'll be siphoning the wort into the glass carboy, into the fermenter, and we'll be very careful not to siphon all the heavy sediment that's going to fall to the bottom of the pot in the next hour. Approximately about an hour's gone by. Just took the temperature of the wort, and it's a little bit above 70, about 74, 75 degrees, but that's fine because we're going to be adding water soon. The reason why we want to bring this from boiling down to 70 degrees as quickly as possible, we want to reduce the possibility of bacteria going into the wort. So the quicker the cool down, the better. You don't want to put ice cubes directly into the wort. There could be some bacteria in the ice cubes, and when they melt, the bacteria will end up being inside the wort. Now we're going to go ahead and siphon the wort into the primary fermenter. We're going to take this specific gravity, actually we'll go ahead and do that right now. The specific gravity, this is called a hydrometer, and we're going to let it just simply, actually we can't do it because it's not deep enough. We'll go ahead and put it into the primary fermenter, and then we'll go ahead and do it. Again, everything has been sterilized chemically. That product that I showed you earlier, you don't have to worry about rinsing. You sterilize everything, and then you go ahead and make your beer. Okay, we're going to be careful not to mix up the sediment at the bottom. You don't want any of the hops that have settled to the bottom to come in. Some is going to happen, but that's okay, and I'll explain why that's okay in just a minute. But we're using this siphon, and as you can see, the pot is approximately 2 to 3 feet higher than the primary fermenter. Okay, the siphoning. There we go. And we're going to siphon out as much of the wort as possible, leaving as much sediment at the very bottom as we can. So I don't have this all the way down, the siphon all the way down to the bottom of the pot where the sediment is, slightly above it. And as you can see, the wort is much darker than the final product. Kolsch is an ale, so you want that straw yellowish color, and that's what it will look like in just a few weeks. The biggest difference between making beer and making wine, there is a cooking process with beer. So the initial stages may be more difficult than wine, but the process is much shorter. Within a month or so you could be drinking your beer. Wine takes about 2 months, and there's a few steps that go along the way. You're welcome to visit a little bit of everything YouTube channel and see my videos about making wine at home. As you can see, a lot of the sediment that is there at the bottom. I'm going to just go ahead and stop the siphoning. We're going to add approximately 2.5 gallons of water. One other thing about this particular primary fermenter, on the side you'll see that there's markings, and we want to get it up to 5 gallons. Before I put the last 1.5 gallons of water into the wort, I'm going to do a specific gravity test. And right now the reading is 1.056, which is great, because as we put more water in, and you have to remember specific gravity of water is 1, we want to get this to approximately 1.042 to 1.046. That is the recommended range for this particular beer, so it ferments properly. We're adding the last of the water. Again, we want to get it up to 5 gallons. Okay. The next step is going to be adding the yeast. The specific gravity reading is right at 1.04, which is perfect for what we want. The next step is to pitch the yeast, and it simply is pouring the yeast over. You do not need to first add the yeast to the liquid. Just pour it right on top. And actually, you don't even need to do anything more than that. You don't need to stir it in. Within 24 hours, again, everything is sterilized, including the top. to make sure it's on tight. You do not want any air to get in. That's why we're going to be using an airlock. What's going to happen with the yeast? Yeast turns the sugar that's in the wort into alcohol and carbon dioxide. In beer, you do want bubbles. In wine, you don't want bubbles. So the goal in wine is to stop the fermentation process, or make sure the fermentation process is completed before you bottle. I highly recommend that we do a two-stage fermentation process. Within 5 to 7 days, most of the primary fermentation will be done. At that point, we're going to rack this into a carboy. And again, that's the glass 5-gallon jug. That will do two things. One, it will take away just the liquid, leaving most of the sediment down at the bottom of the fermentation bucket. And two, it'll make the beer more clear and more desirable to look at. And then we'll keep the beer in the primary or in the carboy for a couple of weeks before we bottle. So right now all we have to do is put the airlock onto the top of the bung hole here. This will prevent any air from getting in, and you notice I filled up the airlock halfway, and this will again prevent anything from getting in. And when the fermentation process really gets to be active in about 24 hours, you're going to notice some bubbling, and that's exactly what you want. You want to keep the primary fermentation bucket somewhere between 65, maybe low 70s as far as degrees go. That would be the ideal range. We'll be back in about a week, maybe a little bit less, to go ahead and rack or siphon the beer from here into the glass carboy. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll be back in a week.